We are live. Live. Let's pop out the chat. Getting set up. It's been a while since I've seen you guys. All right, we are set up. I hope this is working. Hey, Caro. Hey, Pier Francesco. All right, I hope this is all good. Let's move out of that view into the Facebook group. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Hey, York. Welcome to another live stream. I feel like it's been ages since we've hung out together. I think it's only been 1 week that we skipped. Hey, Axel. But it feels like forever. I'm happy to be back with the standard setup. Hey, Stina. Good to be back together with all of you. We've got a bunch of regulars here, but if for some reason you don't know by now, there's this Facebook group, Graham Ezzy's Windsurf Coaching Community. It's on Facebook, and this is where most of the discussion happens during the week. Hey, Bjorn and Dom. Yeah, so a lot of discussion happens during the week, and this is where I decide what to talk about in the stream. Hey, Tomas. It's just all the regulars showing up right on time. Cool. I'm glad to be back. I missed you guys last weekend. I mean, I know we talked a little bit, but it's nice to have the full setup. Hey, Leon. Yeah, and we can just get into some coaching. I'm ready for it. Is there any housekeeping stuff to go over? I think at some point we're going to introduce some rules for cataloging posts. So it's just basically a way to format the posts so that they're easier to find within the group. I'm working on that with a few other people. And so we're going to have something probably at some point soon for the group that will just make it a little bit easier to find posts going forward. Because right now, once you post, it kind of gets lost in the group. Hey, Richie. Hey, Den. What other housekeeping stuff do I have to go over? The clinics. So the masterclass schedule is released in the group, and Denmark is already full. The second week in Tenerife is almost already full, but there's a couple spots left. The first week in Tenerife has spots open, and Portugal has spots open. So if you're interested in doing one of those clinics, let me know. Hey, Chris. Hey, Eric. Let me know sooner rather than later, because they are filling up. And if you want more information, what happens in those courses, let me know as well, and I will tell you. We have this cool movie from Mika and Martin in Fehmarn. I sponsored him with a sale, and he used it in Fehmarn, which is cool. All right, moving on. So if you guys don't have any questions, then I've got a question for you. Have you been sailing? If you've been sailing, where? How was it? What are you working on? Let me know in the comments. I'm always curious where you guys are sailing, what the conditions are like, what you're working on. So let me know. And I'm going to start playing the first video that we're going over. So the plan is we're going to go through the itinerary or the schedule that I posted above, basically going through the back loops, the timing clip, the backside riding clip, and then the back loops from Caro and the 360s. And then we'll go through whatever comments are on that post I did. I saw that Tomas has a post, and there's a few others. So we're going to get into it. Nice, Axel. Good to hear. Galicia is somewhere I've never been, but always want to go. Galicia, I've heard so many good things about, and it looks amazing. I want to go there. It looks beautiful. The waves look fun. But for some reason, I just haven't been yet. It's one of these places that I haven't windsurfed. I really, really, really want to go to Galicia. Oh, no wind for 3 weeks. Sorry to hear that, Dan. Hey, John, have you been sailing? How was your session? I think you were going for an evening session, you wrote. All right. Let's get into this. I want you guys to tell me about your sessions. I'm going to play these clips from Bjorn. Let's make this a little bit bigger. So, Bjorn, I asked you in the comments about back loops versus push loops. And the reason I ask is that there's a few theories around in windsurfing that you're either a back loop person or a push loop person. And if you're a push loop person, then you shouldn't be wasting time trying to learn back loops. And if you're a back loop person, you shouldn't waste your time trying to learn push loops, something like that. I don't know how much I buy that. You know, I don't know if that's true or not. I also don't know what these like YouTube recommended videos are. Like, where did these come from? These are so weird. Anyway, 5 hidden signs a girl likes you. I don't know where these come from. I wish I could close this section. Anyway, back to the action. I don't know how much I buy that. There's definitely some truth to it. I don't know if it's 100% accurate. I was talking to Ben Prophet about this when I was in Portugal a few weeks ago, and he was saying, you know, he firmly believes that you can either back loop or push loop on a side. I can back loop and push loop on both sides, but I'm more comfortable back looping on port tack than I am push looping on that tack, and I'm more comfortable push looping on starboard tack than I am back looping. So there is a little bit of truth that they're not totally independent moves. There seems to be a bit of like a tug of war between the two, right? Where one feels more natural for you than the other. And so anyway, the only reason that I bring all this up, Bjorn, is if you feel like the push loop rotation is more natural, maybe that's what you should try to learn first. And this is quite whippy. I know from your forward loops that you've posted before that you seem to have a good handle of fear. You seem to do a good job of dealing with the fear and throwing yourself into the rotations. And the push loop, if you're going to compare the push loop to the back loop, you know, the back loop's not scary to rotate, but it is incredibly difficult. We're going to go through a lot of back loops today. Back loops are deceptively hard. They're so hard. Back loops are one of the hardest maneuvers to land consistently in windsurfing. They're just really, really difficult. Push loops are kind of scary, but once you figure them out, you can land them 100% of the time. So it's a lot more about the fear and the mental side rather than the back loop, which is really, really super technical, but not that scary to get into. And again, you are kind of throwing the rotation a bit. You know, you're not throwing it so hard. You see some people that go through for back loops in the beginning and they're just winging the whole rig and they're really doing a huge flip. And for those people, I would definitely say, start working on push loops. You're so close to landing the push loop. Just go for it. You know, I'm not sure, Chris, where you are on your jumps, but you know, you've had a bit of both. Like you've had some rotations where, you know, you're this close to landing a push loop when you're going for back loops. And yeah, so in some ways it makes sense then to work on the push loop. Rather than a reverse forward loop, I think the best description for a push loop is a reverse cheese roll, where you're rolling over the mast. I think that's kind of the best way to think about it. So you kind of go up into the wind, you kind of throw it, and you're really focusing on getting the sail under you and your body over the sail, which is kind of that same motion where you're like throwing your body, like you're really using your body to rotate. Whereas in the back loop, you're not using your body. You use the sail and you use your head. Whereas with the push loop, it's really the whole body that's in the motion. And you kind of like flip it up. So like in this part, this is so zoomed out. I don't know if you guys can see it. Hey, Cosmo. But at this point, then you're pulling the sail under you and then in front of you. So you're not really whipping it. This is more like a back loop. Let me pull up a push loop if my search wants to work. So here's just a bunch of push loops we can go through. So can you guys see that? Here, let me pull it more in the middle. So what I want to show is, so you go up kind of like you're doing, but then at this point where you're into the wind, you're really throwing your body to get over the sail and bringing the sail under you. So you can see that I'm pulling in with my hand and then I'm pushing the sail forward. And so it's really this feeling of pulling the sail under and then pushing it forward. We can get another angle on it here. So again, going up into the wind, then really using my body to try and get on top of the sail, and I'm kind of like rolling on top of the sail. And here, like, if we play it in reverse, you can see what I mean, that it's like a reverse cheese roll. So you see, doesn't that kind of look like a cheese roll? Way more than it looks like a forward. Here, we can watch all of these in reverse, so you can see that. You see that? It's just exactly like a cheese roll. You're kind of doing that roll over the mast. Oops. Yeah. So anyway, so that's about push loops. Now I'm not actively trying to steer you to push loops, but I just wanted to put this information out there because I think that you're somewhere on the edge. Like, I wouldn't say that you're basically throwing push loops, so you should go for them, but you are throwing more than you should in a back loop, and so it is kind of similar to like a push loop. And I know from your forward loop video, Bjorn, that you're good with just throwing it, just going for it, which is really the key to the push loop. What do you do with the board? So I really think of the board as following the body in both the back loop and the push loop, but because the push loop is using your whole body more, whereas the back loop is really just using your sail and the head. It uses obviously your whole body, but the focus is more just the sail, what's happening with the sail, and then what's happening with your head. With the push loop, it really is a lot of your body. So there is this feeling kind of like doing a backflip on the trampoline where you're like bringing your legs up over you. But in my mind, I'm really thinking a lot about sort of from my like waist up, getting that over on top of the sail, and then I'm pushing that sail in front of me. So think about push loops if that's something you want to try. I just wanted to kind of throw that out there for you. Now I'm going to give some tips on the back loop. I don't want to get you confused, so kind of let this sink in and then choose one or the other. I don't think it's good to be working on both at the same time because the movements are similar enough that I think you confuse yourself if you're working on both the push loop and the back loop at the same time. So digest everything that I'm going to tell you right now and then choose one of them. And if you choose the push loop, great. If you choose the back loop, also great. Okay? But not both at the same time. Not in the same day when you're just learning, because you end up confusing yourself because they're too similar. All right, so you go up. So I don't know 100% because I don't have a reference for where the wind is blowing here. But it looks like you could take off a bit more into the wind, a little bit more into the wind. It looks good. But you could be a little bit more into the wind. Like pretty much with the back loop, you can take off as far into the wind as feels comfortable. And you'll sacrifice a bit of height if you go too far into the wind. But there's a lot of reasons, if you're just trying to land them, to go way into the wind. And one of the exercises I suggest when you're trying to learn back loops is to go as far into the wind as you can. So you just keep, every attempt you go more and more and more upwind on the takeoff, and then you'll find the point where it doesn't work anymore. And I bet you it's way more upwind than you thought before you did the exercise. So you come down, and then it starts to rotate too fast, and then you let go. You want to be careful. So there's a few big concepts that I want to go over here. The first one is you want to be careful with bailing, because if you do this 10 times a day and you let go like this every time, you train your body to let go, right? Right? What we're training for is then what we end up doing. You're building that muscle memory. So if you build the muscle memory to let go, you're going to be letting go. Now, of course, you want to be safe. And I know this feeling, you're over rotating. You feel like you're going to flip around. It's going to hurt. And so that's why you're letting go, right? And so when you're learning to back loop, you really want to think about under rotating. You can land under rotated back loops pretty easily. It's very hard to land an over rotated back loop. Yeah, that sounds difficult with the ramps. And it's, one of my big themes with the coaching is that you want to train for what the conditions are providing. And, if there's only a ramp every hour, you might want to look for a different solution to learning back loops or push loops. Doesn't mean that it's impossible. And look, if this is the only, you decided, okay, I'm only going to sail at this spot. Is this Lista? It looks like Lista. I'm only going to sail at this spot for the rest of my life. This is just what I have to put up with. Then just deal with it. But if you go somewhere else for a little trip, maybe it's Guincho in Portugal is pretty good jumping with wind from the right, and you were working on the back loops, or maybe it's Morocco when Morocco opens up and you learn them there, then it's so much easier to transport that back to a place like this rather than learning at a place like this. Because once you have that foundation of skills, it's really easy to apply it here, but it's difficult to get that here because you have so few opportunities. That said, it's really not impossible to learn here. And I don't want to be discouraging. Just one thing that we always want to be aware of is what the ocean is doing and what the ocean is providing us. And at the end of the day, what windsurfing is about is being in sync with the ocean, not forcing something on the ocean. But that said, you can work on getting better at spotting ramps, finding ramps, looking for different ramps. And you asked the comment, is it easier with this kind of like random ramps to do push loops or back loops? I think probably back loops are easier with the random ramps. Yeah, and Richie also makes a really good point in that, if you don't have consistent conditions, that it really takes a long time and you're sacrificing other things that you could be working on. So I think that's kind of a good point. It ties in with the point I made before. So if the conditions, Bjorn, are really difficult for learning these back loops, maybe pick and choose the day. So maybe there's days where you get at least 10 attempts, 12 attempts. Because if you're only getting 1 or 2 attempts, it's really hard to put in the reps. 10 attempts in a day, I think is enough. More than that is great. But then, wait for the days. I'm sure there are some days where it really is working well. But yeah, otherwise then maybe also consider going somewhere where, you can focus on this for 3 days. It doesn't have to be a month-long trip somewhere. I know travel is not really possible at the moment, but when it is, whether it's Portugal or Morocco's so good for jumping with this wind direction. Morocco's amazing. That's somewhere I want to do some coaching when it opens up next year. I think Moulay is one of the best places for coaching in the world, or at least around Europe, if not in the world. Handsome's the other side, but that's also not actually bad, because Handsome's pretty good for jumping, and if you learn it on that side, I think it also makes it then easier when you come back to your home spot for picking it up again. So, and then Pier Francesco leads to the next problem. So I hope you guys are taking notes, because we've been a little bit all over the place. But Pier Francesco, you are reading my mind, because I said I had two main points. This is the second one, or part of the second one, about when you're sheeting in and when you're sheeting out. So one way to think about the back loop is you want to sheet out. I mean, you're not actually sheeting, like actively sheeting out, but you can sheet out on the way up, and you sheet in on the way down. That might not make a lot of sense, but if you try it on the water, you'll see that it really improves the control that you have and the rotation that you have. Because what happens is when you sheet in on the way up and then sheet out at the top, which is kind of what you're doing, it gives you that whippy sped up rotation, which again, a push loop is called a push loop because you're sheeting out in it, which is that, you're pushing out, which is speeding up the rotation. But if you think about it like here, if you're sheeting in the sail hard, what do you expect it to do? Like if you just think, like imagine, like forget everything else and you just look at this position and you imagine that you're sheeting in the sail, which way is the nose of the board going to point? I want you guys to answer this. Like if we look at this still frame and I sheet in there, or Bjorn sheets in, is the nose going to point to his right or to his left? And then I'm going to pull up some more video so we can talk about this. This is a back loop I did at Jaws. This was a crash. That's over rotated. Yeah, exactly, Bjorn. You go to the left, right? It's like doing a forward. And so what you're doing is you kill the rotation by sheeting in on the way down, right? Because your rotation's rotating with this perspective to the right, but then by sheeting in, you start rotating to the left, and that kills the rotation. So then you come down just nice and controlled and straight, which makes it super easy. Devil's tack, sailing your other side, is so good. It's one of the easiest ways to get better quickly at windsurfing. When you go back, so you spend a week, with the wind from the wrong side, and you go back to your home spot, it's amazing how much you've improved. But so sheeting. So this is a 1 foot one, but you can kind of see it. So you can see, like, look how much I'm sheeting out here. I'm not like banging the sail in. I mean, you want to be close to the gear in the back loops, but you can see that I'm not like sheeting in super hard until I get to the top. And then look how hard I'm sheeting in, and I stay sheeting in. And you can see that I get a bit of like quick rotation right there. And then from this point down, I'm not really rotating at all. And that's because I'm pulling it on the sail, sheeting it on the sail, which then counteracts the rotation. And then it's just super easy. It's like you're just sailing straight down. You land super downwind, which is another really important point, is that you land on the nose like this, like really on the nose. and really downwind, and then you do that last part of the rotation in the water. Like here, this is a landing. I have another one from this sequence. So if this is a landing, you can see again how much I'm sheeting in. I'm looking with the head. I'm coming down on the nose. Oh, that one has sound. Hold on. All right, got some more questions. Hey, Tom. Max, no worries about the timing. Were you showed up a bit early? Yeah, we're changing to 9 for summer. That seems to fit better with people. Also with me. 9. So I guess that's 8 UK time. All right, so I'm gonna show this last video and then we can move on. Let me pull up the chat. Yeah, so Richie, that's exactly what I'm thinking about as well when I'm doing it. So I think it's kind of like a forward where I'm sheeting in and pushing the sail forward. Dom, one of the things that you might find useful, I mean, you can do back loops, Dom, but one of the things you might find useful to doing them more consistently, and I still think if we do a few days together in Pozo, it'd go a long way to getting them really consistent. Is really kind of thinking about that where you're not sheeting in too hard on the way up, so you're kind of lightly sheeting in on the way up, like almost on the point of sheeting out, and you can keep the sail. Like one of the things, I was talking with Maureen. So Maureen posted a really good back loop on Instagram, and she's been training in Pozo. And I'm not sure if she's in the chat. She's been a part of our coaching before, and she posted a beautiful back loop. And so I'm always curious when I see people progressing and figuring things out. What worked for you? What worked for you? And so I called her as soon as I saw it. I said, "Hey, great back loop. What helped you to crack it?" And one of the things she said a few things. So one of the things she said was really keeping the gear on the way up. Okay, well, Maureen, you tell me if I'm if I'm saying this correctly or not from what you said, and if you wanna jump in the chat as well, go ahead. And nice back loop again. That was a beautiful, perfect back loop. So one of the things that she was saying, and I think that this is something that you can really internalize. I want to pause quickly. When we're talking about this coaching, and I'm giving these tips, I think for you guys, one of the best ways to take advantage of this is to listen to everything, maybe write it down, maybe take some notes. But instead of thinking in steps like 1, 2, 3, 4, oh, I need to do those steps, take certain concepts or body positions and just focus on 1 or 2 of those. So whatever seems to ring the most true to you. So write them down from what I'm saying and then focus on those. So rather than like, okay, step 1, 2, 3, 4, you're like, okay, I'm going to focus on, kind of sheeting out on the way up and sheeting in on the way down and taking off really upwind for the back loop. And then you've got these, and then put those into like body positions that then you can visualize. And so you're not thinking verbally, you're not thinking in steps. You're like, okay, this is my upwind position, and you can kind of think and feel. And then, okay, and then I'm going up in the air, and you've got that body position. And then I'm coming down, sheeted in, and you've got that body position. And for every person, there might be a different key image that helps them unlock the move. And so I try to give maybe 5 or 6 key images depending on what we're talking about, but I don't expect you to try to internalize all of them. For some people that might work, but for most people I think you want to internalize 2 to 3 of them and really think about the image and then work on it. And then once you get those concepts, then you can move on to the other ones, or they might be enough just to crack the move. So one of the things that Maureen said really helped her was to bring the sail kind of back as she's going up. So if this is the sail, rather than going up like this, she's got her hands sort of more this way. And then as she goes up, then the hands start to come forward. So the hands are kind of going from like this motion. And so they're kind of, in the beginning, I think like kind of like in line with the, like a bit in line with the nipples. And then they start to come, once you're up at the apex and you start rotating, then they come over and you sheet in. And so as you're going up, you know, your hands are kind of back like this. And you get to the apex, you look over the shoulder, hands come forward, that motion, and sheeting in. So she's saying front hand close to the center of the chest at the takeoff. So Marine, am I describing that correctly? So kind of, you know, your front hand is like this, and then once you're at the apex and looking over the shoulder, then the hands are coming forward and you're sheeting in. I'm gonna go through this quickly. This is from me in Pozo. You can see that I'm really going upwind. So look how upwind I'm going on this takeoff. I mean, look, I'm going on this angle, and I was going out before on this angle. I mean, I'm going to a right angle compared to where I was going. And so I was going, you know, I wasn't going upwind before that. I was trying to get some speed up, but you can see, okay, I'm taking off, up at the top, and then sheeting in, bringing it down. So Marine is saying perfectly correct. So, so I think I understood what she was trying to say. Again, sheeting in. And again, one of the things I like about what she's saying is she just needs to focus on a few concepts on the takeoff. And if she gets those right, then she can go with the flow and land it. And that fits in with what I'm saying before about choosing these concepts or body images to focus on and internalize rather than trying to focus on everything. And so for each move, there's maybe like one or two key body images, movements that you need to crack. And once you get those, the rest will just come. And so when I give, you know, 5 or 6, you don't need to learn all 5 or 6. You need to learn 1 or 2. Now, what those 1 or 2 or 3 are depends person to person. So, you know, you'll try a few of them, you'll see if it helps you. If it helps you, and then if it doesn't, then maybe try some of the other ones. But I think I've explained clear enough how I expect this kind of coaching to be used and be useful for you. So this going, Bjorn, just to recap a bit. So going super upwind, like more upwind than you're going, even though it does look like you're going well upwind. Keeping that sail kind of back, so your hands are kind of lined up with your nipples. And then once you're at the apex and turning over, bringing that sail forward and really sheeting in. Thomas Fenson is saying that you can move your backhand back, which definitely does help. And it's something that you see happen a lot with me, with a lot of other people doing back loops. You don't have to though. And you know, for some people that might be too complex of a movement in the middle of everything once you're in the air. But anyway, what you do at the apex is then you're really looking with your head, spotting that landing, bringing the sails from that like nipple pointing, or like swim fingers like this, and sheeting in and pointing where you want to land, pointing with your front arm, pointing with your board, pointing with your head. So, and then then another concept is kind of sheet out on the way up and sheet in on the way down. So Bjorn, we've gone over a lot of different keys to the back loop. We've talked about the push loop. It's up to you now to go through all this. If you're not taking notes, maybe go back and watch it again and choose what you're going to work on, and then let us know. Report back to us and get some footage. Give us some results, because maybe you're super motivated. You're going for the back loops here in Norway, and it doesn't matter. You get 3 or 4 attempts a day. That's enough, and you're focusing on going upwind, keeping that sail back when you're going up, moving it forward and sheeting in on the way down, and you crack them, right? Maybe you decide to go for the push loops. I would spend maybe a little bit more time on the back loops before going for the push loops, because I think if some of these concepts make sense to you, then you can start working on them. And then spotting the landing with the head is super important. This is one of the concepts that I always bring up with the back loops. If you're not spotting the landing with your head, you're never going to land them consistently. Then it's just a gamble. It's like rolling the dice. Sometimes you'll land them, sometimes not. So using your head is so important. All right, we answered this question already. All right, moving on. So Bjorn, if you've got more questions, let us know. But I think you've got now a lot to think about and to plan your next session, your next time on the water, to make it the most. Sorry, focusing on getting this video set up. Making it the most productive session that you can. All right, we've got a question from Mark. Here are 3 attempts at backside turns that I'm not happy with. I was overpowered on a 5-7, which felt very uncomfortable, so I couldn't focus on technique. How to best manage a situation like this and deal with excess power. So being overpowered on big gear like a 5-7 isn't fun. I think the bigger the sail, then the more difficult it is to be overpowered on. And so a 5-7 is not fun to be overpowered on. It's much better to be overpowered on a 4-7 than it is on a 5-7. Just the way that the aerodynamics work. So it's tough when you're overpowered on a 5-7. It can be hard to make it work. I'm gonna go over a few key concepts here, Mark, that I think will help you whether you're overpowered or underpowered. To answer your question about the power, it's difficult again when you're on a 5-7 and you're overpowered. My main tip is make sure that you've got the sail rigged as flat as you can without compromising performance. So get it downhauled, get it outhauled, put some tension on it, make it flat, make it the head loose, and hopefully that helps. At least you can make it more controllable even if you are overpowered, even if you're still overpowered. All right, so let's play this, and I've got a few little comments that I think will help when whether you're overpowered or underpowered or perfectly powered. Which is basically that for these backsides, I see that you're really carving hard here to make this section, which is nice. Good job. And you can do that. But what's more important in this kind of condition that you are describing is to really make sure that the bottom of the board lines up with the lip to get that high five. And that can be your number one focus in this kind of turn. And so you don't need to go so hard on the heel. And really work on getting that, as you say, like getting on the toe side rail before you make contact with the wave. You don't have to be on the toe side rail, but you want to be transitioning rail so that the part of the wave that's breaking or the water hits the bottom of your board, gets that high five that we're always talking about, makes that contact to redirect you. And so what you can do to work on these in the beginning is not even carve into it, not even do a hard bottom turn, and almost just sail into it. So you're just sailing upwind like you'd normally like just sail upwind. But then as you're coming up to this whitewater, lean forward to show the bottom of your board to that breaking part of the wave so you can get that high five, get that connection, and have that energy transfer from the wave to your board. Because right now you can see your board is like this and the wave is hitting it like this, and then there's no energy transfer, right? You've got to get it like this. So you don't have to be leaning totally forward. You don't have to be, leaning over to touch your toes or whatever, but just a bit forward, so more of a like upright stance rather than leaning back like this. And then you can kind of just like come up on your toes, and what you can do is kind of give a hard sheet in on the sail as you're approaching that whitewater, and then just sheet out. Again, you don't have to do that hard sheet out like you see pro guys doing on the backsides where the sail goes horizontal, but you do want to be sheeting out when you make that contact, and that allows your rig and everything to be loose and ready to take that energy that the wave is going to give you. So you want to be more upright and really focusing on getting that board so that the bottom of the board connects with that whitewater. And as I said, you don't even really need to do that hard carve up into the lip in this kind of conditions, especially when you're working out on this part. And I commend you for going for that. But what I'd like to see is in this kind of conditions is really just sailing into this whitewater and then just showing that bottom of the board. So to do that, you just kind of sheet in a bit, you kind of lean forward a bit. So you're on top of the board, lean forward a little bit on your toes to show that bottom of the board of the whitewater, and just pick up the power and come back in. I can't tell, but it looks like you're hooked in, which Max brings up as well. And you want to unhook. That'll give you more control. I'm guessing that you're hooked in because there's so much power. You said you're overpowered, and so you're trying to control the sail with your body by staying hooked in. The problem with this though is that then your body is really far back, and it's then harder to transition to that upright body position where you can get on your toes, so that you don't like, all you have to do is like be upright, put a little bit of pressure on your toes and kind of sheet out the sail, and then just get the board. So like if this is the board and this is your sail or your body, you just kind of like lean upright, put some pressure on your toes, and then the board just goes like this, and the whitewater comes under it, makes that high five, and carries you forward. But unhooking will definitely help with that. And even like kind of in this section, you can do the same thing where you're just presenting the bottom of the board. So it's like you're just kind of sailing up into it. And again, you kind of do a sheet in as you come up to it. And then all you're thinking about doing is just getting that board so the bottom is facing that whitewater. Do whatever you need to do to make that happen, right? And that is going to lead to the energy transfer that you want. So that's the biggest thing to work on. I've said it a few other. What is this YouTube stuff? Come on. I've said a few other little tips, and so hopefully that helps. I can do a post as well. Let's see. I wonder if I have video ready. This is a backside 360. I mean, there's a little backside actually. There was I don't know. I've got to look through my files. I should have some. I should have some backside videos that I can show. But really, the most important thing is about just getting a bit more upright, getting on the toes, and just trying to get that bottom of the board facing the white water to get that high five. And you can sheet in as you're going into the turn, and then sheet out when you're making that contact. And just making sure you're more upright and don't do it hooked in. So, Mark, you've got some stuff to work on. If I remember, I'll post it under your video. All right. So, moving on. All right, so we've got this video from Alex. And Alex, after I watched... Axel, after I watched this video, I had a question about your weight. And I don't know if I got an answer to it. So, I don't think you said how much you weigh. And I think you've mentioned it before. But my feeling, and I could be wrong, but I think the 105 liter board is too big, even for float and ride conditions. And that's one of the reasons that you're having trouble with the timing, is that the board is just too big. And if you're on too big of a board, yeah, it's going to be great to catch waves, but your turns and your ability to turn quickly are going to be compromised, and then your timing is going to be compromised. So for example, I'm about 90, let's say I'm like 92 kilos. I don't know. My body changes a lot in weight. I gained all this weight after my knee injury, which a lot of it is from the rehab, because now I've got all these big butt muscles from the knee rehab that I didn't have before, which I guess weigh a lot. And so I'm heavier. Anyway, so I'm like 92 kilos, and I can get away with like an 88 liter board in float and ride conditions. Now I've trained a lot of my life for those conditions, so that's not a perfect parallel, and I'm not saying you should get a 88 liter board, but maybe a 90 liter board would work. Okay, so you're 84. So yeah, I think 95, I would say 94, 95, 96 would be your upper limit for a float and ride board. That might be disappointing, I'm sorry to say that. Or it might be liberating, you might, because sometimes, like, I see this with people, I see this in myself, where you feel really frustrated with something and you blame yourself, but actually it's the condition, it's the equipment, and it's not your fault. But 105 liters is a huge board. I don't have a 105 liter board. The biggest boards I get, I had a 100 liter board a year ago or something. And now I'm going to get a 96 liter board also this year. But I think smaller boards are really going to help you. Yeah, Caro is saying, or trying smaller fins. I would go with a smaller board. So like, for example, your timing looks great, and then it looks like you just stay on the bottom turn too long, and it makes it difficult to get to that section in time. And I know this feeling. I mean, this is the same feeling I have when I'm riding a board that's too big or too stiff. And often a board that's too big is also too stiff. So, I don't know. I know that's frustrating because we love our equipment, and that can be a shitty thing to hear. But also it can be liberating, right? That it's not something that you're doing wrong. Like, you're 84 kilos and you're riding a board that's 20 liters more than your weight. I could not wave sail to save my life on a 110 liter board as the comparison. Could not at all. So now you're saying that your 94 doesn't really feel like a light wind board. That could also be the case, liters aren't everything. Width is really important. Rocker line is important. So it can be that your 94 has aspects to it that make it less good of a light wind board. And this isn't a like emergency, right? You don't need a new board tomorrow, but it's something to think about. So what you want to then realize is that that your bigger board is stiffer, so you're gonna have to take slightly different lines. So I would ride then, when you're on that bigger board, a straighter line on the wave. So instead of coming down the wave and doing U-shaped bottom turns, recognize that the board is stiffer. It's going to be slower on those long bottom turns. So do more shallow bottom turns that are more drawn out, more of like kind of a long flowy turn, kind of like you're going for an aerial. Big boards like that are great for doing aerials. And sessions on this are not wasted. It's like swimmers. I don't know if you've ever seen swimmers train, but they'll also train. They do the races in their speedos, but they train with like swimming shorts on, because there's more drag, so it slows them down. And so it's kind of like training with weights or something. And so that's also what you're doing with this bigger board. And then when you get on your smaller board, it will feel so alive and so amazing. So there are positive aspects to this big board. But to answer your question about the timing, I think a lot of it has to do with the board. And so, all right, you're going to keep riding the board. Change your lineup to recognize that the board is going to be slower and harder in the bottom turn. And then also don't be hard on yourself. Recognize that you've got this board that's going to be really difficult. And, look at it kind of like weight training. So like, what are the advantages? It makes it easy to get out when there's almost no wind, right? So you get days on the water that you wouldn't get before. One of the number one things I tell people in their quiver is you need a good floater. You need a good floater board, because you just get more days on the water. You get more waves. So when the wind is light, you can catch waves, and this is what that board is for you. And now maybe in a year, maybe in 2 years, you get, you find a 95 that works for you, and you get that board, and then you use that board as your float and ride board. But until then, this is getting you those waves, is getting in your reps, which means that, you're having more fun, you're improving more. So double thumbs up there. And then two, it's kind of like that training with weights, where when you get on your smaller boards, then they feel more lively, faster, and all of that. And then, extra bonus benefit is that it forces you to realize how much equipment matters and how much equipment affects what you're doing on the water. And then you can change your line on the wave, which then will give you more variety in your repertoire for your windsurfing, right? Because then you can do your tighter turns, and then your longer kind of flowy turns. And that's just improving. Someone who often rides big boards is Josh Angulo. He doesn't ride that much anymore. At least we don't see so much footage of him anymore online, or I don't know how much he windsurfs these days, but he would ride big boards. He's a big guy, and he would ride big boards and big sails. And he would often do these lines that I'm talking about, where, he's not doing a full U bottom turn, and he can, and you see him, when there's a little bit more wind, he's on his smaller stuff doing the most vertical bottom turns out there. But a lot of times he's on these big, rigs where he's on a 5.8 and 115 liter board, and he's, riding the wave like this rather than like this. And it's a great technique to learn how to do. Let's go through this a little bit more. I'm going to answer the questions from the chat quick. So Eric, these conditions look pretty light. Axel, why don't you let us know kind of how much wind there was? I can sail on my 88. Depends, but like an 88 and a 5.5, I can probably sail in 8 knots, 10 knots. Depends, I guess, what the gusts are and what the waves and what the conditions are like. I mean, I sailed on an 88 and a 5.2 when I was in Portugal, almost in no wind. Like it was glassy, and then just in the gusts kind of moving around. But, you know, if there's waves, I can catch it. Yeah, Richie. I mean, like I said, I'm 92 kilos and I'm on an 88, and I can really ride that in anything. And you know, sometimes I'm sinking. I sink up to my knees. I sink up to my waist sometimes, which takes a lot of skill then to be able to maneuver while you're underwater with the board. But it's doable. So the point being that you don't need to be, you know, 20 liters more than your weight. I think 10 liters more than your weight is plenty when it comes to a floaty board. But as we've already established, there are factors other than volume. Volume is important, but there are other factors. Width is hugely important. Where that width is, where the volume is, also is really important. You know, I had a big board made a couple years ago. I still have it. It's on Maui. And it was a copy kind of a smaller board, but made bigger. And we decided to keep the tail the same as the board there's being like stepped up from. So I think the same as my 82, which meant then, so like the last, whatever, 30 centimeters of the board were the same, and then the volume kind of was in it on the rest. And it didn't really work. It didn't work in light winds. And the reason I think is because the tail didn't have enough volume and it didn't have enough width. And so even though the board had a lot of volume, had a lot of liters, it didn't work for what I wanted it for because it didn't have enough width and volume in the tail. So it kind of didn't work. It was supposed to be a light wind board that had the tail of a medium wind board, so it could turn great, but it just didn't work. So again, the distribution with all that stuff matters. Yeah, Richie makes good points. Concentrate on getting a lot of waves, bigger board. And then you can go down to a smaller board. So Axel, I think you should start thinking about getting 95, 96, 94 liter board that you can sail in light winds. But I'm not talking about today. You know, maybe it's in 1 year, maybe it's in 2 years, maybe longer. I don't know. There's a lot of benefits now to riding your 105, but just recognizing the limitations. And sorry, I'm reading your comments. There's so many good comments in the chat. And then using the board in the ways that I described, you know, getting a lot of reps in, getting a lot of waves, focusing on different ways of riding waves is really good. Staying higher on the wave. All right, let's go through some chat. Would it not be better to surf when the wind is so light? Yeah, sometimes, but I like windsurfing. I like surfing too. But I like light wind sessions because the waves are clean and there's maybe no one out. Yes, Ragnar, the wetsuit also adds weight. Force 3. I'm not so good with force 5, 6, 7. What is that in knots? Stina, so you're 63 and you have a 76. I think there's also something, the smaller you are, kind of the bigger the board you can use. So I don't know what's going on with the fluid dynamics of it, but it's just my anecdotal experience is that you shouldn't, Stina, I don't think you should go under 63 liters. In fact, I think maybe something like 65, 66, something like 10 liters apart, and you'll notice a really big difference between your 76 and like a 66-ish. But I don't think it would benefit to go smaller. So like, for example, Traversa doesn't have any boards that are less, at least the last time I sailed with him, doesn't have any boards that are less than his weight. And I see that same trend with other smaller riders. Whereas the bigger riders on the other side, me, Philip Coster, whatever, we have boards that are the literage is less than our kilos. And so there's something, Brasinho, so there's something that's happening with the fluid dynamics. And I don't know enough about the science to say why, but I've noticed it enough that I would say that it's kind of a law. So it's, just to answer your question, Tina, I would say something like 60, 66-ish, plus or minus a liter or two. Yeah, it looks like Tomas is saying the same thing. Agreed. Thomas is saying 93 liters and 5.0 for light wind wave sailing for weight 75 to 85 kilos. Not my experience. And I get around as good or better than anyone on the spots. I don't need such a big board. On my 88 and 5.0, 5.2. I also don't mind going to a 5.5. I can be super mobile in the water. All right, Eric's saying force 3 is 7 to 10 knots. Yeah, that's nice. Or light. Okay, so yeah, Caro is saying about the same. So more anecdotal evidence. You can try her boards if you want. And I might be able, let me make a note. I can reach out to some other small sailors I know and see if they have boards like Traversa or something. So something in the like 66 liter range. I don't know if I can find it, but maybe. Yeah, let's see. All right, I'm gonna play this a little bit more. And Axel, maybe I've got a couple more, or I know I have a couple more tips because I've already watched this and I've got notes on it. So I've got a couple more tips. I like this this kind of flow where you looks like you get the high five there, you pick up some speed, you come to this next section, and then the wave kind of peters out, but you still get another whitewater hit. I like to see it. I think that's good productive riding on this board. So here again, I can really see how big the board is, right? Like I can see that it looks like you're in the right place. Like there's things that look right. And I can see that the board is just so big. It's really hard to engage the rail. Good effort, kind of forcing in this turn. You're a little bit late, but I really like that you go for it anyway. And this is going to come back because there's another section coming up where you don't do that. So I want you to like remember this section, and internalize the feeling of just forcing this turn. It's a little bit tighter, it's a little bit later than the other turns in this video, but you just go for it anyway. And just remember that feeling. And there's another section coming up where I want you to, oh, that was nice. I like that. We're losing quality. Why are we losing quality? All right. I don't know what's going on. Maybe my internet is having trouble. All right. So that was a nice turn. Now, Axel, I want you to remember that feeling for that turn that we talked about. And then there's another section coming up. All right, so I mean, you're getting these high fives. So I like that. You know, I think we've talked a lot about what you can do with this board and in what ways it's useful. You know, feeling the flow, and it's kind of like that weight training with these bigger boards. All right, so you come down from this turn. Now you go for the next. I like the flow. I really like the flow. So here, on this turn, I want you to try and hit this. And I know it's kind of barreling. I know it looks kind of late, but I want you to try going a little bit tighter and hit that section. You're good enough too. And it's that same energy that you had to hit that other section, which, yeah, that other section was a little smaller, but it's I think about one of the things that you can do now to improve your flow and improve your riding is forcing, and forcing is the wrong word because it's actually a flowing. It's kind of the opposite of forcing, but it feels a bit like forcing, where you're forcing some turns or sections that you think you might not be able to make, and then you're surprised actually that you can make them, and that helps you to keep flowing with the wave. And I think there's one more example of that. Oh, maybe that was it. Maybe there was another one here. And I think it's a pretty good exercise to do with this big board. And with your small board. But it also can give you a lot of confidence, because I think you'll really be surprised actually when you see those sections and you just have the faith that you can make it there and that you can. And then you're like, oh, whoa, actually I can turn a meter tighter than I thought I could. And it's just about getting those high fives. As long as you get the high five, then everything will work fine. The whitewater will redirect your board. You'll take the speed from it, which is exactly what you want to be doing. So I hope that's clear enough, Axel. Let me catch up on the chat. I am in Hamburg. Moin moin. Marco said he's got one board, 88 liter at 80 kilos. Sounds good. Tavi mentions that the type of board is super important. Yeah, also the type of board matters a lot. Yeah, Richie, I think you make a good point about going late here. And you do that a lot. Axel. So I want to see you kind of force those turns. Try to get those vertical sections. So when you see that section, you think, oh, I don't know if I can get there. Just have the faith that you can. And you will. So like that was that example. Here's another. One last wave, and then we're going to go back to the Facebook group. So Axel, let me know if that makes sense. We talked a lot about your board, about the mindset, and then a couple small things to work on. So let me know if that makes sense. And let's move on. All right, so we've got this 360 from Caro, and she's been working on the 360s, and I like this position a lot. Looks like Caro, looks like you're seeing some progress in the 360 and getting more comfortable with it. As Mussolini says in the comments, Mussolini is one of the best 360ers in the world for sure. And, you know, what he points out is, I think, really, really true, which is that wave selection and timing are really key to landing the 360 back inside the wave. While that's true, Carl, I think there's definitely benefit to working on the goose screws to get the motion. And that can help you to get the motion. And then you start looking at the section and the timing. Richie also says to move the hands in the bottom turn while riding to axle. That's also true for sure. Moving your hands is always good. But yeah. So Axel, what you can hold in your head, do. Like, I don't want to overload you with too many things. Like, moving the hands is always good, but you're doing a great job of being more active with the rig than, for example, what we saw from what was that, last year or 2 years ago. And I really like this timing and the sync that you have. So kind of keep working on that flow, trying to get some tighter turns, make those sections you don't think you can make. And then if you have brain left in there, to move the hands then. So Carl, I think working on the rotation, kind of the goose screw, can be useful right now. And to do the goose screw, you don't need to go so far around. So there's a lot that I really like about this. So I like that the bottom of your board is facing the lip, right? Because a lot of times people in this position, the board is sort of lined up with, instead of, if you're the wave, the board is kind of like this, like still on the rail. And then it's not getting that high five. It's not getting pushed back. You've got that board pointed to the lip of the wave, doing that high five. That is great. I want to see you leaning more inside the circle. So if you can see my mouse here, there's like a circle that you're making, right? So like, here's your bottom turn. If you just continue that, and this was a circle, I want to see you trying to lean with your body inside that circle rather than outside the circle this way. Now, when you do it, it won't always look like you're leaning in the circle, but that's the feeling that you want, is leaning into that circle. So you're leaning over here with your body. So you're putting your center of mass, your body weight over here. So that's the first kind of concept to think about, is that you've got this circle and you want to be leaning with your body in here, but keeping the sail, like we've talked about before, close to your hip. So with your front hand close to your hip and really sheeting out. So you can bring this front hand even more towards your hip and this back hand even more out. So we've talked about 360s quite a bit on the stream. I don't know what this is, a 360. I don't even know what footage this is from. Huh? What is that? That's not me. That's not me. Okay, so here's one. So, like, this is the position that you can really put in your mind. So maybe here, I'm going to open this and I'll take a screenshot of it. And that position, you can just kind of think about all the different key aspects of it. I'm just checking these other ones, what they're like. These are all different kind of 360s. These are more like aerial 360s. But so what I want you to think about is this entry. And now there's one thing I'm doing here that I don't want you to do, and I'm going to get to that in a second. But there's a lot that you can kind of internalize from this position. I've got my front hand pulled down and in, and it's like on my hip here. Backhand sheeting out. The sail is super sheeted out, wide grip. and I'm leaning into that circle. So, right, so here's the circle. You can see my mouse, guys. And I'm leaning into that circle. And then when I hit the wave, it just pops me right back around, back inside, like it's nothing. And it's super easy once you get that right, that setup right, and then the timing right. So the one thing that I want you to do different, so I mean, I want you to internalize that position with that front hand close to your hip, really shooting out and leaning into the turn. That's the most important thing, okay? The secondary thing is you don't need to go so vertical. So here you're going 12 o'clock. You don't have to go so far. You know, your board could be pointing here and you'd still rotate. But again, the most important thing that I want you to think about is this position. Okay, I'm going to take a screenshot. And you can maybe even, I can send this to you and you can print it out and just look at this before you go out on your session. I can flip it around so the wind is from the left. And, you know, I used to do that with moves. So every time I got a windsurfing magazine, and I was a kid, I just loved all the magazines. And I'd cut out all the moves I wanted to learn. So goiters, back loop, big forward loops, 360s. And I cut them out and I put them all on my wall, my room, taped them up. And I looked at them every day, right? In my room, on my wall, and just looking at these different positions, whatever it is. And then we moved to a different house when I was like 16. And I remember my mom asked me if I wanted to take the pictures, and, you know, said, no, you know, we can throw them away. I can do everything now. I can do everything that's on the wall. And so my point is that looking at those images and getting positions can be really, really helpful. So it might even be useful to just print it out, and then before you're going out your section, you just look at that position. You think about, you know, those key concepts of keeping the front hand close to your hip, shooting out and leaning into the circle. And, you know, that's kind of the main thing. Other thing, you don't have to go so vertical, but lean into the circle, keep that front hand on your hip, sheet out. You can just sheet out. You don't really have to ever really sheet in on the move. I mean, you sheet in eventually, but it just feels intuitive. It's like the rig sheets in for you. So you don't even have to really think about it, especially not when you're working on the entry like this. So again, keep that front hand close to your hip, lean into the circle. I'll send you the photo. All right, I'm going to catch up on the chat, and then we've got Caro's back loop and a few other clips that were posted, a couple from Tomas. All right, so this back loop from Caro. I'm going to quickly catch up on the chat. Thomas is saying you need a smaller board when the waves are more critical. Yeah, I buy that. Yeah, I was also saying you need a 93 liter board to go through heats in Europe. And yeah, I compete a lot on a 93 in a lot of different places. Tenerife, Sylt, Denmark, for sure, 93. And then I also, like I said, I had 100. Competition is its own beast. Yeah, but a lot of time that is also more onshore. If it's more down the line, like float and ride, then it's different. And all right, we've got this back loop. So Caro, I hope you got what we were saying with marine, because I think there's a lot of crossover here in terms of what we were talking about with Bjorn and marine. There's a lot of crossover here. So You can still take off this. I mean, this is a great attempt, right? Like, I like it. You're coming around, you're controlled, you're under rotating. Good. So what we're talking about are small things. Like, I'm liking what I'm seeing here. This is controlled. We're on a really good path. So you can take off a little bit more upwind, which will help you. You can get a little bit less travel down. Bjorn, what do you mean? What about the head? In the back loop? Or in the 360? So, like we said with Bjorn, you can have that sail farther back as you're going up. Kind of think about your hands a bit like in position with your nipples. And then, at this point, then you start to bring the sail more forward. This Marine called it like a windshield wiper movement, which I can kind of understand. And so you're kind of sheeting out a little bit on the way up, which you're doing, and then sheeting in on the way down, which it also kind of looks like you're doing. So those are solid, but it's still good to think about. And then what you really want to do is, I'm not sure if Bjorn is talking about the loop in this one when he's talking about the head, but that's the next thing I'm going to say is the head. As we can see here, when you start your rotation, you've got good head movement and the rotation starts pretty nicely. And then you're no longer looking around to where you're going to land. And that's where you can really see that then your rotation is slowing down. And then you try and speed it up by kicking out your leg. But you actually never really want to steer the back loop with your leg. You want to steer it with your head and with the sail. So instead, to get that rotation coming down, you're doing that like windshield wiper sheeting in thing with the sail, and then really looking with the head. And it's, I feel like a broken record stressing this, but the head is so important for the back loop. It's the only way to land consistent back loops. You're not going to land consistent back loops if you're not looking with your head. Maybe some people disagree with me, but send me the videos and show me 100 back loops where you're not looking at your landing and they're landed, because I don't believe you. The head is so important. And you do a good job with the initiation with the head. I want to see that carry around. And so then here, instead of looking at your board, your head is turned around and looking at where you're going to land. And really, like, even if you didn't go more upwind and you're just looking more with your head, you would have landed this. Like, this is so close to being landed, right? You've got some wind coming in on the other side of the sail. Like, if you were just looking a bit with the head, more, like over your shoulder with the head, this would have been landed. Now, take off a little bit more upwind. Do that a little bit with the sail motion, that little windshield wiper motion that we're talking about. And look with the head, spot your landing, and you're going to be sticking these. Because this is so close. Yeah, so Bjorn, I concur with that analysis. And again, Carl, good job with the head here. You're looking. Keep looking. Look there, and then drive even more with your head, and you try and see where you're gonna land. Like, find the spot. I find the spot on the water where I'm gonna land when I'm up there. You could get a little bit more height too, but you don't need to. Yeah, look between the arms. We don't want that. We want to look where you're going to land. So think of using your head and the sail to steer you, not your feet, not the board. The head and the sail. We can work on this in Tenerife. Caro is I hope you don't mind me sharing this. She's joining one of our clinics in Tenerife. And we can be working on this there. All right. I don't know what happened to my Facebook. Wanted to reload. All right, Carl. So I think there's some clear points to work on. I think taking off more upwind, you will find useful as well. All right, so we've got a couple posts from Tomas. My computer is spazzing out. I don't know what's going on, why these other things are not loading, because I think we had some more comments. Come on. Okay. So here's starting a wave ride with a backside. So that was one of John's questions, when to start with a backside or not. It really depends on the wave. Depends if you feel like you can build up more speed and flow from starting with a backside turn, then you do it. If you feel like it's going to mess up your ride, then you don't do it. So for example, in hands thumb, I feel like there's a lot of sections where it helps me to set up with a backside, and the backside is maybe not off the whitewater like Tomas is doing, but more just on the face of the wave. But it really sets me up. First of all, I just like how it feels, because you get these nice walls to do that turn on, and then it sets me up for my frontside turn. But there are other places like Cabezo where sometimes by the time the wave is ready to do your backside turn, if you do the backside turn, you're going to be too late for the frontside section. So it really depends on the wave. All right. Yeah, so John, that's pretty much what I'm saying. All right, now let's get to these videos from Tomas. So we've got two videos from Tomas. I'm going to catch up on the chat. All right, so Richie, that's funny. Yeah, maybe that's true. I want to see the video still. I want to see 100 of them. It's maybe kind of like the back loops that Ben Profit just made a video about. These like super mini ones, super upwind, super mini back loops, where it's actually almost even a different move than what we would normally call a back loop. But maybe not a bad way to learn back loops. Ragnar says, what is the physics of the windshield wiper in the back loop? Is this to put pressure on the front of the board to complete the rotation? I think it's doing a few things. Like one is I think it helps to kind of guide the rotation as you're coming through the eye of the wind. But then two, and I think this is really important, is it puts your sail in a position where it's pulling the rig a bit downwind, which then kills your rotational momentum somewhat. So then you have more control on your landing, because then you're rotating a lot less on your way down. So what you do is then you have that like kind of quick rotation at the top, which that kind of helps with. And then that with that sheeting in and like getting the sail forward, like we were talking about before, you're countering the rotation. So it's almost kind of like a forward loop motion, where then the rig is being pulled downwind, but your rotation is upwind. And so then you kind of just stop, and that gives you really a lot of control. I don't know if that's enough of an answer about the physics of it. I can think more about what's happening with the sail. All right, so Tomas wants to do aerials. And these are nice. Ragnar, I think it's like two parts. Like the second part is to stop the rotation, like when you're in this position. And so you've got to like kind of do that transition to get this to that position. But also there's something about the transition that helps also guide the rotation as you're rotating through the eye of the wind, which gives you some more control in that process, like in that part of the loop. So it's more smooth and less jerky, and less kind of sudden. But yeah, stopping the rotation really helps. Like I'm slowing it down, because it doesn't always like stop it, but definitely slowing it down and making it control. So Tomas wants to do aerials. These are great setups. I love these Ezzy bottom turns. It's not really the setup for doing aerials. I mean, this second one a little bit, right? Like the main thing with the aerial is that you want to, there's so many different kinds of aerials, but what I think the kind of aerial that you're talking about, based on how you're setting up for these waves and saying that you want to do aerials, it's super important to get the timing so that as the lip is coming forward like that, it hits your board and throws it out. And you don't want to be going too vertical. I mean, you can do them vertical, but they're harder. You want to kind of have a down the line momentum and let that lip catch you. So you need to be at the moment where the lip is throwing. And so here you're a little bit early. And so this guy is blocking the wave, so we can't really see. But it looks like the wave is starting to throw kind of like now. And so if you just been a little bit later, a little bit farther down, maybe, or just a little bit later, then it would have thrown you out more into an area. You would have had more projection. And on this first one, maybe the same, but it's hard to say. This might not be a section that's throwing enough. And if you want to do an aerial like that, you need to have this section that's throwing. Otherwise it doesn't work. There are other ways to do aerials that you can do on these waves. But then you want to be going more down the line and less of this nice Ezzy bottom turn. I'm saying S like the letter, not SC like my name. But so like if you're kind of going straighter, and then you can just kind of hit these sections and pop off of them if you have enough speed, and you still need to get that high five. But if you have a lot of speed and you're traveling down the line, you don't need that throwy lip as much. Yeah, Bjorn, it does seem hard to predict on these waves. I concur. So I'm just reading the other comments that people have put before. So kind of agree with Mario here, but not sure, because it still is not really throwing that much. Yeah, wider arc. Yeah, it seems like people are kind of agreeing. Dan. Hola. Good to see you. Are you still living in Tenerife? How are the conditions if you are there? Yeah, Dan sent in some footage. He's not on Facebook, so he sent me the footage off Facebook, and we're going to go through it sometime. Never happened, but he's ripping in Tenerife, and I want to know if you're still living there. So it seems like from looking at the chat or the comments here that people are kind of saying the same thing I'm saying, which, you can go wider. Tomas is saying, yeah, I think the lip is actually too soft to get the projection, which I agree with. Hitting in a different place. Made the bump turn less tight, powered up with your back. Yeah, it's all kind of saying the same thing. Mario, it does look like this section is throwing, but it's pretty hard to get in here. It looks like there's not a lot of setup up above the wave to get speed to come in here. And then this part in front of this section is crumbling. So I actually don't see this as a good aerial section here. The one down here does seem better once the wave starts to break. Yeah, okay, so then we see the zoomed out bit, and yeah, exactly, there's zero setup for this. So, Tomas is doing what we like to talk about, where you start on a power source and you're going to a power source. right? So, I mean, these are nice turns, Tomas. I like them. It's just, it's just about, okay, if you want to do these aerials, then there's some, some small things to work on, but also recognizing that maybe these waves are not, not that easy for doing aerials. So here's an example of an aerial where this is a bit different because Victor is powered up. This is in Pozo. He's got a ton of power in his sail. It's super onshore. And he's using the wind and his feet more than anything else to get, it's almost like a chop hop. So there's an important timing aspect to this. And so he pushes off with his feet and gets a bit of kick. But this is very different than any kind of aerial in sideshore conditions or down the line conditions. And the only reason he makes it back inside the wave is because it's so onshore. Like, look, he even lands kind of behind the wave, but I mean, Pozo's like straight onshore, super windy wind. Well, there's a lot of discussion here. 10 replies in this. All right, some more video. This looks like Mark Pare, but that's not an aerial. Not using the sail. So Rory, you don't have to use the sail. Like, I would say a lot of times I'm not using the sail, which are the nicer aerials. You don't really want to be using the sail. But if it's like onshore and mushy, then you do need to use the sail, and then you're doing this like kind of chop hoppy thing, which again, this is exactly what Loic is doing in this clip, right? He's got power on the sail, comes up to the section and like chop hops and throws his foot up. And the secret is that these are actually not that hard. I mean, there's technique in it, sail technique in it, but I don't know. I guess it's just different, I should say. Gosh, there's a lot of discussion. This is all in the last, like, I guess 4 hours. I'm going to go through this. I don't need to go through this all on the stream. I'll post some comments once I have a section to read all this. Here's one from Tavi. So I think this is closer to what Tomas is trying to do. But the difference is, I mean, this section is a heavy section. I mean, this is a completely different kind of wave and section to what Tomas is working with. That is completely different. Cool. I'm coming to Tenerife, Dan, 21st of July to the 8th of August. I'm doing some coaching there. I'm coaching a couple clinics, and then I'm coming a little bit early, so I'm going to have some free sailing. And yeah, so Tomas, I'm going to go through this and read what people are saying and look at these examples. I think there's some stuff in here that's relevant and some stuff that is not relevant. Let me see. I've got a few. Okay, so here's an aerial. This is Hokipa. So it's a bit different, but you can see that I'm really just like getting that board in the part of the wave that's throwing, getting that high five, and then it just throws me out. Right here, I'm in the air, and I just fly in front and land. I can post that in the group. I think I already did, though. Let's see. Somewhere in here I have more aerials, which we've gone over before. But Tomas, I think you know what I mean. And so it really comes down a lot to angles, where you are. All right, let's load. I think this is an error. So again, you know, this wave is throwing, like this wave has a lip to it, and I'm just putting that board in the lip. I'm not doing a Ezzy bot, like, you know, I'm not doing a U-shaped bottom turn. Look, I'm barely doing a bottom turn at all. I'm just kind of sailing straight into it and getting the board placed in the lip. And then it just throws me out. Here's another one. This is a pretty windy day. So this one has more of a bottom turn. But again, it's not like that U-shaped bottom turn. It's a pretty wide bottom turn, so I keep my speed and then just really putting the board to get that high five exactly when the wave is throwing, and then taking that energy transfer, the momentum transfer, and flying with it. I think there's some other... I think this is another one. Yeah, I mean, this is a tabletop-y thing, but it's kind of, again, all the same concept. Like, I'm not really doing a bottom turn here. I'm just kind of sailing into it, but getting the angles right and the timing right, making sure it's throwing, and then it throws me up into the air and can come down. Here's another one. Again, like really not much of a bottom turn. I did this cutback, set up, and then just, you know, sail into this lip where it's throwing. There was another one, well, there's a whole bunch in here too that I had. Let's see if these are them. And then, oh, here's another one. So again, it's, you know, this super wide bottom turn, a lot of speed coming up into the part of the wave that's throwing, and then just taking that energy transfer, getting that high five. All right, I'm going to close that. Yeah, cool. Dan, I'll see you in Almedano. I'm looking forward to that. All right, Tomas, I think we went through enough. Is that clear enough? I'm going to post more because there's so many comments on this thread. I want to read them all. I think some of them apply and some of them don't. You know, there's a lot of different kinds of aerials. And I think you're trying to do something pretty specific. And so it's good to clarify and also clarify my coaching for what then you want to do. But in general, it's so much about what the wave is doing and just being at that point where the wave is throwing and getting your board in there. And if the wave is not throwing, then it's not an aerial wave, period. I mean, if it is throwing, you've got to, you know, the number one thing to focus on is getting your board there in the moment that it's throwing forward. So you get that energy transfer and you don't need to do such a U-y bottom turn, you know? But, cool. All right, guys, that sounds like the end of this session. This was a long coaching session. I hope it was useful. I'm going to follow up with Stina about the board. Caro, I'll send you that photo of the 360. I've got openings. So Denmark masterclass is sold out. There are spaces in Tenerife. Week 1 is July 25 to 30th with a day on the 31st in case there's no wind during the week, but there will be wind. And then August 1st through August 6th with a reserve day on the 7th. That second week is almost full. There's also space in Portugal, which is in August. I think it's August 15 to 20th, but I'd have to double check that. And if you want more information, let me know. I'm really excited to coach in these different locations. I think each location really lends itself to something different kind of learning, different process. And so my strategy is different for each place. And I'm really looking forward to all the progress that's going to be made. It's really, really fun. So if you want more information, otherwise have a windy week, have a fun week, post in the group, let me know where you're going. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. And I'll see you next week, Sunday. Get on the water, get some footage, get some photos. Most of all, have fun. All right, guys, I enjoyed this. I'm glad to be back. It feels good to be back home with the setup, the light and the mic and the computer, rather than in a random McDonald's on the way home from a sailing session, though it was a very good sailing session last week. And I'm looking forward to getting on the water again. All right, I'm going to sign off. Take care, everyone.